In part one of this video, we looked at our organs from a weight loss perspective. And we saw why it is challenging to use daily caloric expenditure equations or even fancy machines to figure out what our metabolic rate is and build a weight loss plan accordingly. We saw how our organs are in a constant state of flux and how little changes in our environment, whether in the internal environment of our bodies or the external environment around us, can drastically change the energy expenditure of our organs. And we talked about how little control we have over them. And we talked about how the fact that all of our organs agree that energy conservation and energy management and energy storage are of paramount importance. Now, in this video, we are going to talk about why that is the case exactly. Why did our bodies evolve in such a way to maximize efficiency in energy conservation and energy storage as well?
Although your age is merely measured in decades, the genetic code that you are carrying has been developed, polished, and adapted over millions of years of survival. So let's put things into perspective. So let's have a look at what our species went through over the millions of years of our existence. See, our great ancestors, they lived in trees initially. Their bodies were quite accustomed to that, in fact. We are talking about 3.5 to 2 million years ago now. Then a climate change forced them to come down from the trees and start wandering for food. This eventually led to migration to all corners of the earth. But for the vast majority of the subsequent time, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. Our food sources were reliant on what nature provided. Our diet consisted mostly of plants, nuts, and seeds. Eventually, we started hunting small animals. The fact that we relied on what nature provided meant that we had a cyclical food supply. So we would go through periods of plentiful food, followed by a period of sparsity. The oldest modern humans, the Homo sapien, has evidence dating back about 350 years ago only. For all of this time, nature has been selecting humans who are best at conserving energy, that are able to deal with this reality of food shortage for many months at a time, while being able to explore despite this food shortage. This little red area here is the representation of our time as modern humans, and even in this time period. The time of potential food abundance around the year didn't start until agriculture and food storage were discovered. So from a time scale of our species point of view, having to deal with caloric abundance, as is the case now, is a very recent problem that our genetics have never had to deal with before. The agricultural revolution was only about 400 years ago. Compare that to almost 4 million years of living as a hunter-gatherer, and you realize how a body that adapted to being an explorer, hunter-gatherer, would not be so well adapted to a life stuck behind a desk with easy availability of caloric abundance. Now, although these time frames are gross estimations, they do give us an idea of what our great ancestors lived through. We started exploring the far regions of Africa about 500,000 years ago. We didn't cross over to Asia until about 100,000 years ago, which led us to move on to Europe, and subsequently we explored the sub-Indian continent about 70,000 years ago. We then traveled down to Australia through Indonesia, most likely on some form of boats where we went island hopping essentially. We likely have developed more advanced communication skills which allowed us to collaborate and build these boats together. Our crossover to the Americas didn't happen until about 15,000 years ago. Keep in mind that the continents likely were much closer back then, and most of the northern hemisphere was still frozen during the Ice Age. So it's likely that we just walked over the ice. The frozen landscape was also the likely reason we didn't explore Russia and China until much later. Of course, back then, all these countries didn't really exist. I'm just using them as a reference to the geographical location. But this story helps us to have an idea about what our bodies had to adapt to. Basically, long walks bearing tough environmental factors with months of food shortage and food sparsity. And the hunter gatherer lifestyle that our ancestors faced had a few challenges over the hundreds of thousands of years. So, for example, they had to walk and explore for long distances to find their food. So, this basically meant they spent a lot of calories to get their intake calories. Also, their food sources fluctuated according to environmental factors. So, if it's summer or spring or winter, sometimes it was plentiful, other times it was scarce. So, they regularly faced the risk of starvation. The fact that we didn't know how to grow food yet meant that food sources could run out. So, we had to defend the food sources that we actually find. Now, they physically also had to withstand harsh environmental conditions on their exploration journey. So, and this tested their body's homeostatic processes, meaning the ability of their body to keep their internal parameters stable while the outside environment changed a lot. These were challenges that our bodies faced over hundreds of thousands of years. So the hunter-gatherer lifestyle forced the bodies of our ancestors to adapt over hundreds of thousands of years to their adversities. We still carry their adaptations in our genome until this day. Our bodies became efficient at storing energy. Our bodies developed ways to conserve energy during caloric scarcity. Our bodies became efficient at homeostatic processes, even in the toughest conditions. Our bodies develop the ability to adapt to physically demanding conditions. They learn to adapt to physical challenges requiring stronger and more powerful muscles. Our bodies also learn to balance the risk of developing physical adaptations of strength with the caloric cost of these adaptations. It's important to note that most of the challenges that we faced were solved with efficient energy conservation and efficient energy storage, meaning less energy expenditure to achieve the same functions and more energy storage. We indeed became masters at this. Even the fact that we became bipedal, meaning that we walk on two legs rather than four. Now, some theories say that this happened to give us a hunting advantage over other animals, as it would give us a better vantage point. And other theories indicate that it's a more energy efficient way of moving about.
So imagine the situation, guys. You have to walk for miles and miles every day to be able to reach a food supply that might or might not be there. And you have no idea whether it's going to be plentiful or whether you're going to have just a few measly bites of fruit. And imagine yet the situation during winter times, when all the plants have lost their fruits and shed their leaves, and you still have to walk the same long distances, except you have a lot less food now around. And all of this needs to happen while you are essentially spending a lot of energy and getting a lot less energy in from your food. And there is even something more amazing here.
Now, women had to survive these conditions, but they had another layer of challenges. So, women need an additional 150,000 calories over the 9 months of pregnancy. They further need an additional 200 to 500,000 calories over their lactating months. These extra calories need to be found on top of their caloric expenditure for exploration and for foraging. Now, this needs to happen even during the winter months. Even to this day, because of these various adaptations that women went through, women are more likely to survive a famine than men. That's due to their metabolic adaptability and metabolic flexibility. And this could be the reason why women in general are of a smaller size than men. It's to do with being more energy efficient. They can achieve the same things as men in terms of exploration, hunting, and gathering, but in a smaller package that requires less food to maintain. So I guess what I want to say is if you are a woman who is finding it difficult to lose weight, then we pretty much owe our existence to you and to women like you. It's because of these abilities of energy conservation of our great grandmothers that our race was able to survive all of these adversities. Now, in addition to our women being an amazing adaptationist, our race had another great trick that distinguished us. Now, our greatest adaptation is by far the way our brains evolved. It is, after all, the neocortex that separates us from other mammals, and it's this area here. So this is a cross section of the brain. So this is the front of the brain. This is the front of the head. This is the back of the head. This is what connects down to the spinal cord. And this area here is unique to us humans, while we share these parts with the rest of the mammalian world, essentially. And this is a picture of the outside of the brain, and it shows how each part of the neocortex is responsible for certain functions. As you can see, each area is responsible for certain functions. Other mammals, they have a similar cortex, but it's much smaller. This allows us to use our bodies in more ways, with more control and more of everything, really. And then there's the prefrontal cortex. That's where the real magic happens. The long-term planning, decision-making, executive function. This is where it's all over here. This is where it's all processed, analyzed, and decided. The thing is, that's not the whole story. This couldn't have been the main reason why we survived this long. My reasoning is quite simple, really. The timing doesn't really add up. Let me explain. Our neocortex took almost 4 million years to grow to its current size. If our efficiency in finding food relied solely on it, we would have gone extinct a long time ago. Our brain had other, much simpler tricks. These are simple, yet efficient and effective to make sure that we do actually survive. So, if the neocortex wasn't responsible for us surviving great food shortages, then what was? And to answer that, we need to have a closer look at our modern human brain. But before we move on from this slide, this is the oldest humanoid that has been found, and they named her Lucy. And you can see the size of the brain where it fits compared to the more modern human. This is us basically currently. And we can see how the brain grew from 600 cc to 1400 cc, but it took almost at least 3.5 million years. So this alone would not have been the reason why we survived all of these adversities. To simplify things, the brain can be divided into reptilian, limbic, and neocortical brain. So the reptilian brain is responsible for instincts and like reflexes, while the limbic brain is the center for feelings and for pleasure. And the neocortex is where the higher function happens. Now, of course, dividing the brain into these three entities is a very, very simplistic ways, but it does help us understand how the brain functions better. So, in reality, the feeling of, for example, pleasure is actually controlled by many various areas, including the cortex. The reality is that our relationship with food and eating is deeply wired into these three sections, or into all parts of our brain, including the instinct part, the reflex part. It's connected to our feelings in general and the feeling of pleasure, and to our higher functional executive thinking. The end result is a brain that excels at ensuring survival during the most arid times. And these are some of the survival mechanisms that our brains adapted to ensure our survival. So it is built into our brain to continuously and subconsciously seek cues leading to a high caloric food. Storing information surrounding high caloric foods, such as the surroundings, the time of day, the colors, smells, etc. All of the information that lead to this high caloric food, the brain is essentially programmed to continually scan and seek them. Releasing pleasure signals when we consume high caloric foods is also a way to get us more attached and to give the high caloric food more priority. Keep in mind, you have to put this into perspective of our whole history. And you can see how these adaptations are going to become troublesome in times of food abundance, or rather caloric abundance. Another trick of survival was that the brain senses and becomes hyper aware to previously encountered cues leading to high caloric foods. It is also designed to make you prioritize high caloric foods over other activities. And finally, being able to ingest high caloric foods even past the satiety points. And again, put this into perspective. This is very useful during times where food was cyclical in its supply. So people used to go through, for example, spring, or a time where there's a lot of plants around, and they would eat past the satiety point. So when winter comes and there's no more plants around, they have good fat storms to carry them through the winter months. So, as I was saying earlier, the brain is connected to all parts of our brain, the instinct and reflexes, and the neocortex as well. And looking back at the parts of our eating behavior that we have no direct control over, and we will look at parts that we do have indirect control over. This table sheds light on some of these. So, under the involuntary control, we have hunger signals. When we feel hungry, we don't really have control over that. The same goes for satiety signals, cravings in response to cues, withdrawal symptoms when we withdraw food and we go for a prolonged period without food, and the pleasure sensation when we eat certain foods. These are all things that we have no direct control over. However, we do have voluntary control over the choice to decide how to respond to all of these signals, and the choice to learn how these work exactly so we are better at identifying them, and the choice not to judge our bodies for learning to survive over all of this time. Now, it is easy to see why a brain fine-tuned over millions of years to deal with food sparsity would get into trouble in times of constant caloric abundance. In the mental health section of this course, we will go into detail into how all of this happens. More importantly, we will go into detail on how we can use this information to achieve our healthy bodies goal. All of this needs to happen while we take care of the root cause of this problem, the brain. But yes, losing weight is indeed tricky business. And it goes against everything that your genetic code has learned from its journey of millions of years. And we will start by arming your neocortex with the knowledge it needs to go through this journey successfully. But it's important to realize that the key to understanding the intricate nature of weight loss lies in understanding that your body doesn't really understand weight loss. It understands survival, and energy deficiency is an emergency that the body is very well adapted to. And the main message is don't fight your body. If you try to bully your body into weight loss by using some fad crash diet promising 30 pounds of weight loss a week, you will lose. Your genetic code has 4 million years of tricks and tips to deal with huge sustained caloric deficits. Sustained weight loss over many years that continues, it needs to be a negotiation with your body while respecting its boundaries. Now, there's plenty of literature about successful negotiation skills, and I do believe that they apply to our case here. After all, our neocortex wants something that the rest of the body doesn't want to do: let go of its precious energy stores. So, these are some of the most common tips and strategies used in successful negotiations. And the first tip for successful negotiation is respect. It has to be the first one on the list. Learning about your body is one way to learn to respect it more, and respect how hard it is working to keep you alive. Understanding that the problem is not personal. Your body is not out to get you. It's just using its tips and tricks of survival it gathered over millions of years. The more you learn about how it works and what its point of view is, the more likely you are to achieve common grounds. Learning about your body will improve your ability to listen to it, understand what it wants and what it's trying to tell you. It will help you understand its language. After all, negotiating parties do have different languages indeed in this case. Last but not least, explore various options to achieve your desired result. The more you learn, the more you are able to formulate options for you that you can pick and choose from without ending up in a war with your body.
And that is essentially what this course promises to help you achieve. It's all the knowledge and all the skills that you need to successfully negotiate your weight loss with your body, so you can achieve consistent weight loss while maintaining a positive mental state. Now, losing weight doesn't have to be hard, guys. The more you learn about your body, the more you learn to respect its boundaries, respect its language, the more enjoyable the journey will be, the more essentially nurturing and rewarding it will be. And that is the main goal of the course, to give you an enjoyable experience while you are on your weight loss journey. As far-fetched as it sounds to you now, but I advise you and I strongly encourage you to try this course out if you are somebody who has been struggling with weight management issues. And it is true that the willpower of people dealing with weight management has been a source of inspiration for me. But it has also been heartbreaking for me. You see, once you realize how much willpower and how much stress people go through in order for them to lose weight, it it's really heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for me, at least before I managed to put people through this course. And it's always a very rewarding experience for me when I see how people's life changes when their willpower is freed to actually achieve other life goals that they have. And this is one good thing, I guess, that comes out of having weight management issues, it really polishes your perseverance and your basically willpower. And with the help of this course, I am hoping to be able to free it for you, to tell you there's another way, there's another more rewarding, more nurturing way, and reserve the skills that you have learned to achieve your other life goals, the bigger life goals as well. Now, I do realize that understanding how robust our energy storage and energy management systems are is quite worrying for somebody who is trying to lose weight. But I'm here to tell you that your body makes sense. Once you understand what is happening, your body actually makes sense. As long as you respect the boundaries of what your organ systems are essentially trying to achieve, and without overstepping these boundaries as well of energy conservation and energy management. And the other thing is, the body has just as robust mechanisms that can actually help you out. You see, energy conservation and management alone was not the only skill we needed to essentially survive. Exploration was a very big part of it, and the body is very well adapted to that too. So just like you have blind trust in the fact that your body can store energy, I invite you to trust also that your body has other mechanisms that work in your favor. They are all naturals. Again, there's no pills, there's no surgeries that you need to do. You just need to learn them and integrate them into your life. So the course was designed with your mental health at its core throughout the course. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you after you watch the course. And even if you don't buy the course, I'm looking forward to hearing from you about your thoughts about everything what I essentially said. And most importantly, I'm looking forward to hearing from you over the next 5 years. I'm really looking forward to hear whether I'm able to achieve similar results for my patients and for my clients using distance online courses that are easily essentially distributed versus a face-to-face sitting where I sit down for 50 hours with someone. So let me know, guys, and thank you for watching, and see you soon, chat.